We've all walked down a hallway just like this. Each step that we take bringing us closer to the futures that we hope for. But recently, there have been a lot of questions asked about the future of education in Oklahoma. This is Orange Nation Magazine. I'm Julia Benbrook, and we are about to get you some answers. ABC, 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 Directly or indirectly, these hallways and classrooms help shape us into the people that we are today. We begin by learning our ABCs, and then we move on to things like addition and subtraction. We even learn social skills on the playground at recess. Eventually, we dive into more complex subjects like literature, politics, and technology. No matter which way you look at it, these classrooms, and maybe even more importantly, the people in them, provide a place to grow. At a very young age, we're told that we can do anything we want to if we work hard enough. But with the recent budget cuts in education in Oklahoma, is that still realistic? Whether you sit at a desk as a student, lecture in front of a classroom as a teacher, make decisions as a politician, drop your child off for class, or simply a citizen of the state of Oklahoma, this issue affects you. And we begin this show by asking students at Oklahoma State University how they feel and what their thoughts are on the education budget cuts in Oklahoma.
I just know that as for the limits wise, there's a lot of like teachers, especially for those who are just been recently hired, that they are at a high risk of losing their positions.
Being 48th, out of all the states, that's pretty low. So I don't think we can compete with the other states as far as education goes. I think we need to increase funding for education at that point.
It's really going to hurt the economy because without education, you don't promote better jobs, you don't promote the economy growing. You're actually going to have less people wanting to come work here.
I don't really know what the solution would be for budget cuts for education. I don't know if there's a different sector that we could take away funding from, because that's kind of a tricky issue.
If I was to cut the budget, it would probably be, I think, jails and prisons and stuff like that. Again, I don't know a lot about the information on it, but I feel like the education of our children is more important.
It's a complicated issue with many things to consider. The Oklahoma Balanced Budget Amendment, also known as State Question 298, was passed in March of 1941 as a legislatively approved constitutional amendment. This means that unlike our national government, the state of Oklahoma is required to balance their budget at the end of every fiscal year. So where will those cuts be made? The Oklahoma legislature is currently trying to decide what to do. Our reporter, Alli Hill, has some facts and figures to share.
We need roads to drive to work on. We need funding for mental health. We need people trained to keep us safe. We also need a balanced budget. Oklahoma's budget can be divided into 9 different categories. In order of the amount of funding they receive, the categories are education, public health, human services, public safety, transportation, general government, judiciary, natural resources, and miscellaneous appropriations. 51 cents of every dollar goes toward education. So as Oklahoma faces making new budget cuts, education faces the harshest outcome.
For one, we don't have all the lights on during the day. The classrooms only have 1 set of lights on, and the halls only have 1, if any at all. And then also in the math part of the school, we don't have any worksheets anymore because, I guess, budget cuts.
When I'm in the classroom, it all seems simple. Raise teachers' wages and don't cut funding for education. When I'm at the Capitol, it all seems a bit more complicated. In 1941, Section 23 was added to Article 10 of the Oklahoma Constitution. It says that the state shall never create or authorize the creation of any debt or obligation against the state. This means that Oklahoma is not allowed to be in debt. Because of this amendment, the Oklahoma legislature has to decide where funds are going to be cut from, and they have to do it before July 1st, when the fiscal year ends and a new one begins. The elected officials have already said that along with other categories, education will have to suffer major cutbacks in funding. These inevitable cuts have led people to wonder what is going on in the minds of Oklahoma lawmakers and how are we going to save education.
No one in the House, Democrats and Republicans, no one is on a mission to cut, bash, or to take education down.
Not only is Earl Sears on the Appropriations Budget Committee, but he's also a former school administrator, and he has the responsibility of building the budget for Oklahoma.
I see the big picture, the entire budget, from $1 million pass-through or a $250,000 pass-through to public education, which receives about $2.4 billion, everything in between.
With the unpredictable turn in oil prices and a combination of tax credits and money allotted to different programs, Sears is claiming that what Oklahoma is facing is called the perfect storm.
You take that $3 billion and that $1.7 billion, and then the downturn in the oil, it's just has left us with not enough money to run the state. So now saying that, we do have to make some tough decisions and some tough choices.
The choices to be made are difficult, and the outcome is unpredictable. So how can we minimize the negative implications this could have for the next generation?
The University of Oklahoma's president, David Boren, suggests a penny sales tax to boost funding for education, and Oklahoma State University's president, Burns Hargis, agrees that it may be the only solution. OSU OKC president, Natalie Shirley, serves a special dual role when it comes to this issue. She is not only the president of a university, but was also appointed by Governor Mary Fallin to serve on her cabinet as Secretary of Education and Workforce Development.
The reality is that budgets represent choices. We are in a tremendous budget downturn, and we are going to have to make harder choices than we have in the past. But it's completely doable. As long as you understand what your priorities are and keep your eyes fixed on that, then the choices become readily apparent.
So how do we encourage educators in the school system who feel undervalued already?
I think we've got to pay teachers more, but we also have a responsibility to value not only what they do, but they need to value what they do.
We need to be able to fund our jail system. We need sidewalks, streetlights, fire hydrants, and the people involved in making those available to us. But we also need quality education for the youth of Oklahoma.
We have more to educate you on after this break. We visited the Oklahoma State Capitol and sat down with some of the state's most well-known politicians. In 1990, Oklahoma legislature passed Bill 1017. It was one of the boldest and most progressive moves for education. It provided smaller class sizes, minimum teacher pay, and a new standard for curriculum. It made Oklahoma education a priority. So how do we get from there to here? I sat down with Oklahoma Speaker of the House, Jeff Hickman, and Speaker Pro Tem Lee Denny to discuss the difficult decisions that the legislature will be having to make dealing with education.
We've had a 70% drop in the price of oil. We've had over 12,000 people, now approaching 13,000 people, who have lost their jobs and are out of work. 60% of the rigs that we're drilling for oil are laid over and aren't drilling today. That has a dramatic impact on our economy in Oklahoma and on state revenues. That is the industry that drives our economy in this state, that employs thousands of Oklahomans. 51 cents of every dollar that comes into the state is spent on education. Education's our top priority, obviously, when 51% of your budget is spent on education. A third of that alone just on public schools. 33% of our budget is spent on our pre-K through 12th grade schools in Oklahoma. So it's a very large chunk of spending. So in order to balance the budget, obviously you can't ignore 51% of your budget and make drastic cuts on other areas like corrections, it's in crisis, or the Corporation Commission, or DHS and Child Welfare Services. There's so many other entities that are also dependent on state revenue.
So we already rank very low in education funding nationally, and how do you think that affects our school systems?
We are now spending over $420 million a year on health insurance just for teachers and school superintendents, school personnel, just in common education. $420 million. That number goes up $20 to $30 million every year. That's the money that normally would have been used for salary increases, but it's going to the teacher. They're just not seeing it in their pocket because it's going to pay their health insurance. Same thing for the retirement systems. The teachers' retirement system, along with some of our others, were almost on the verge of collapse because of mismanagement for decades in the state. We have put hundreds of millions of dollars into the teachers' retirement system. Last year alone, $294 million went into the teachers' retirement system just to get it solvent and have it moving towards being healthy to provide the benefits to those teachers when they retire. There's a lot of sources of revenue through the state that schools get in addition to just their state appropriation. And then they get federal funding as well. When you add all of that up, we have a record $8.2 billion available to schools this year to spend. And the thought that education somehow has been cut or that we've led the nation in cuts, that point is being made out there, and it's nothing more than a lie. It's absolutely not true.
Well, I'm here with Speaker Pro Tem Denny, who has chaired the Appropriations and Budget Committee for Education. Can you tell us a little bit about why education is so important and why we should value it in Oklahoma?
Because our kids are our future. And if we don't get education right in this state, then I think the state doesn't prosper as much economically and we don't grow as a state. So it's been very important to me that we provide a solid foundation from pre-K through 12 and then for secondary, after high school, post-secondary, higher ed, as well as career tech programs.
With the recent budget cuts, and we know that some of those cuts are headed towards education, what do you think is the solution?
We've reached that critical point as far as the state budgeting. So we're going to have to make some tough decisions about what we're going to do about capping off the top spending, not giving away so many tax credits, and only using tax credits for projects that really work to grow the state. But we are looking for that dedicated funding source. The governor spoke on Monday about raising revenue with a cigarette tax. That will be looked at seriously. There's a lot of ideas out there on what we can do to get that dedicated revenue source to give the teachers the pay raise they deserve. And they really do. They don't deserve a $1,000 pay raise. They deserve that $5,000 bump in their salary.
It's an issue of facts and figures, but it's easy to forget that these decisions affect real people. Oklahoma currently ranks in the very bottom when it comes to funding for education. After the break, we're going to show you an inside look at how these decisions affect someone you know. Real lives, real families, real problems. For many, budget cuts in Oklahoma are much more than just numbers. Here's Jacqueline Smith with the story.
Right now I don't have a second job or anything. There's other things that I've had to do, like I can't necessarily buy, a new outfit. If I want to dress more professionally for work, I can't necessarily go out and buy new outfits. I just kind of have to stick with what I have.
Heather Berg is a single mother to her 11-year-old son Elijah and a math and business teacher at Union Alternative High School. Heather has been financially restricted her entire 8 years of teaching, but with the impact of planning her June wedding, along with this year's recent budget cuts, she finds herself living paycheck by paycheck.
Each paycheck I get, it's pretty much just enough to cover my expenses, and then having, I have room for one surprise thing to happen.
One challenge Heather has faced as a teacher is the little opportunity she has to move up and make more.
I can't get a raise for being really, really good at what I do and bringing new programs to my school, or finding new ways to serve students, or finding new ways to connect them to the community or get them jobs. I can do all of those things, but it's out of the goodness of my heart. And I feel like teachers, a lot of the times, we're expected to be fine with not making much more money because we love the kids and you're supposed to do that for them. And it's true, we do love them. I don't want to leave them, but I want to earn more for me and my kid.
And when I asked if she wanted to continue teaching, her response was quick.
No, I do not. As a young person, I want to explore different areas and, in my ability. I want to see what my earning power is and my ability to change things is. And right now with all of the, we have state testing, we have budget cuts, there's not enough room for anyone to grow and try anything new.
Just last year, Melissa White was like Heather, a teacher at Union Alternative that didn't find the job worth the pay. Now, she's officially retired and works part-time for an interior design company.
That last year was the first year since kindergarten, 1970, that I hadn't prayed for a snow day. And then here we had all those snow days and didn't get out till June. So yes, I was looking forward to it.
After teaching for 29 years, Melissa understands why so many teachers in Oklahoma are looking elsewhere.
We have teachers all the time, great teachers, leaving the classroom for administrative jobs and leaving the classroom in Oklahoma to go across the, Arkansas and especially Texas and make, $15,000 to $20,000 more a year. Who wouldn't do that if they had a family?
As Melissa walks out the doors of the school, she leaves behind a few honest words of advice for young, aspiring teachers.
But I would tell them, know what you're getting into, know it's going to be tough, but it's going to be a job that you love. It could be made easier with financially for you. But I would tell them to look elsewhere too. Oklahoma is not the last place to look.
We've walked through the halls of a high school, and we've seen how these budget cuts affect the lives of teachers. But now, let's go to a place where the students are around 4 feet tall, and let's see how these budget cuts are affecting them. Principal of Bigsby North Elementary School, Phil Streets, deals with these sacrifices daily.
Typically, in years past, when budget cuts happen in education, we've simply absorbed those and gotten creative. And nobody really knows that we absorb those cuts.
In the last year, Principal Streets has had to deal with a hiring freeze where he can no longer hire new help for the school. Phil explains that the biggest thing that needs to change is we need to have a more diverse revenue system.
When oil and gas prices fluctuate and the price of oil per barrel goes down as it has so much, we can't afford to hold our kids hostage in our schools. And that's kind of what's happened.
What would you like to see happen in the future?
I'm hoping that we can take this education financial shortfall and learn from it. Adjustments, I think, have to be made, and sometimes adversity forces us to make the kind of adjustments that will make our state stronger and our educational system stronger.
Who knows? Maybe in a year, Bigsby Elementary will have hired new teachers, and maybe Heather will finally get to buy a new outfit. The future is up to us.
Since we visited the Capitol, education has been the buzz of the state. It's a topic that is constantly evolving, and current issues that are being discussed are the possibility of vouchers, reducing state-mandated testing, and the mysterious $43 million that was found in the state superintendent's fund. You would think that these newfound funds would make a huge difference when it comes to balancing our budget, but they would only pay a small fraction of the cuts, and it's only a temporary fix. The future of education in Oklahoma is still our main concern. So where did these funds come from, and why are we just finding out about them? Everyone, even politicians, seem to be asking the same thing. After the break, we're going to talk to you more about the education budget cuts in Oklahoma. Faculty and staff at Oklahoma State University make it a priority to see that each student receives a quality education. Many of those students want to become educators themselves, but they feel they're forced to cross state lines to receive better pay. What would you do when what you want to do and love to do doesn't provide what you need financially? Here's Zachary Furman with the story.
The current budget crisis in Oklahoma has led to some drastic cuts in the state's education spending, and teachers are feeling the brunt of the shortfall.
Those are recently announced cuts, so the impact has not been immediate. However, we have seen some reduction in our revenue. So we've immediately began to just stop spending if we don't have to spend money.
Currently, Oklahoma rests third from the bottom of the national average for teacher pay. The only states with a lower average are South Dakota and Mississippi. Oklahoma's position is worse when you consider the immediate region. According to a report published in January of 2014 by the State Labor Shortage Task Force, Oklahoma allows for the highest minimum salary for first-year teachers. Unfortunately, compared to all neighboring states, Oklahoma is second to last in actual average new teacher starting salary. This includes Arkansas, Texas, New Mexico, Colorado, Kansas, and Missouri, which was the only state to rank lower.
It is hard for teachers to come into Oklahoma because of the low pay grade that Oklahoma starts teachers at.
Ashley Batchelder recently graduated with her master's degree in early childhood education. She says that the supply of educators outweighs the demand.
It's pretty wide open. There's a lot of teachers leaving mid-year due to unforeseeable circumstances such as pregnancy or just off to a different state.
There aren't as many applicants in the state to draw from, and certainly our applicant pool has shrunk in the last few years, a couple years particularly.
Not surprisingly, the positions that need filled the most are traditionally the hardest ones to find teachers for.
We have had some difficulties in locating certain specific certifications like science courses, math teachers. Special education teachers are always at a high need or in a high need area.
I put in maybe 5 applications for my first time teaching, and every single one of them called me back sort of desperately.
Anna Underwood is an art teacher in Ponca City. Though she found a job quickly, she says the conditions aren't exactly ideal.
I work at 3 schools a day. I don't get paid any extra for it, besides my travel. I teach 6 through 12, which is a very wide age group, a lot more lesson planning.
So how does a problem like this get fixed? Everyone agrees that our teacher retention issue is nothing short of an emergency, but nobody seems to be able to come together on how best to fix it.
I think I kind of hear constantly, like, how can we retain teachers? How can we reward teachers? What's an incentive for them? And I'm like, how about just pay us like professionals?
The state legislature has a number of measures on the table to resolve the issue, including an across-the-board pay raise for teachers. In addition, Oklahomans will be able to vote in November on a penny sales tax increase, with the revenue earmarked specifically for education. But no matter the solution, everyone agrees that if something doesn't change soon, Oklahoma will find itself with even less quality educators to go around.
It's not that I don't want to stay in Oklahoma. I feel as though I can't afford to stay in Oklahoma.
Because of what I want to do, if I cannot afford to do it, then I will have to look elsewhere.
One plus one will always equal 2, and the ABCs will always remain the same. But we've graduated to bigger issues. And although no one has a perfect solution, we can all agree on one thing. The issue of funding for education in Oklahoma needs to be addressed. This has been Orange Nation Magazine. We'll see you next time.
Show me what you can do!